All right, Providence, it's great to see you and welcome. So glad you've come out on a beautiful Sunday night. Did anybody hit the state fair this afternoon by any chance and eat some of the nasty food and clog up the arteries and have to go to the doctor tomorrow? So praise. But hey, we had a great morning. Excited tonight to have Dr. Sam Chan, who goes by Sam, back with us tonight. And if you didn't hear him this morning, he works with the City Bible Forum in Sydney, Australia, where he's just trying to encourage, equip folks to get the gospel into the marketplace, to the schools. Also works with the Keller Center for Cultural Apologetics, helping the church think forward in reaching a post-Christian culture. He's got a book, How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. Personal evangelism in a skeptical world. And so great tool that's recently come out, and you can find that online anywhere. But we're just excited to have Sam with us. And so I'm going to say a word of prayer, and then he's just going to rock and roll. So let me pray. Father, thank you for today. Thanks for the opportunity to have Sam with us. And thank you for his family. Continue to lift them up as they've already started Monday and down under. And I pray that it's a great week for them. And I pray that you would help us to even grow in our efforts to reach, to extend ourselves to the point of discomfort, to continue to try to reach reach those that are far from you, and to be able to do it in a winsome way and a kind way, and yet stand on the truth of the gospel. And so just commit this time tonight and ask for your spirit to move and to help us to think through these things together, and then propel us out even this week. So we love you, and we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go about 30, 40 minutes here, take a 5-minute break. I'm going to have a QR code come up right when he's done with his talk. You scan that and then send your questions in. And as that populates, I'll come back up and lead in about a 15-minute Q&A at our end time, okay? So welcome, Sam, up to the stage. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm actually old enough that I was at Billy Graham's 1979 crusade. And Billy was at his finest. Billy gives his 20-minute Bible talk. He then says, hey, if you believe, pray the prayer, come down the front. And then the choir gets up and they sing Just As I Am over and over and over again. And Billy says, if you pray the prayer, come on, come down the front. The buses will wait. And at that moment, we roll our eyes and we think, oh, that's so cute. That's so Billy. But think about it. The non-believer who came that night to hear Billy Graham came on a church bus. So the non-believer back then was a churched non-believer. So Billy's just basically saying, it's time. You've heard it 1,000 times before. Don't you think it's time you believe? But the non-believer we're trying to tell about Jesus now is not a church believer. That's what's changed. Rico Tice, a gifted UK evangelist, he says there have been 3 phases in evangelism in recent Western history. Phase number 1 was Billy Graham, where Billy tells you what you've heard 1,000 times before. You heard it before in Sunday school. You heard it before at youth group. And Billy's saying, come on, it's time, believe. Phase number 2 was what we call the defeater belief phase, where our non-believer friend knows what we believe, but they can't believe what we believe because of what we call defeater beliefs. It could be the problem of other religions. How do I trust the Bible? The problem of suffering. So evangelism means we have to remove those defeater beliefs, and then they believe. So Tim Keller's book, The Reason for God, is an example of that sort of evangelism. And we still need a place for that. But now to make it more challenging, we're in the 3rd and most recent phase of Western evangelism. And we simply call it this. Our non-believer friend is in a different universe, and we believers are in a different universe. Our non-believing friend doesn't even know what we believe. They haven't heard of what we believe. But deep down, they even fear that what we believe is wrong, hateful, and bigoted. So they'd rather not even hear what we believe. So how can we woo them from that universe into our universe? So that's what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes. How can I tell my friends and family about Jesus? And I'm going to share some tips that have been working very well for my wife and me. I hope they also work for you. Also, I do a lot of speaking on YouTube. I came here about 5 years ago, so maybe you have heard some of these tips from me before. If you've heard some of this before, laugh as if it's the very first time you're hearing this joke for the sake of the other people. All right, let's go through some of these tips. Tip number 1, I simply call it, we need to merge our universes of friends. And I hinted at that this morning at church. Merge our universes of friends. What do I mean by this? Well, I want you to imagine that I tell you, you won't believe what happened to my wife and me last week. It was a Friday night. We're watching TV and this UFO landed in our backyard. A little green man got out, invited us inside the UFO, so we jumped in. He took us to his home planet, Jupiter. We got out. He showed us around. We had a meal with his friends and family. Afterwards, we jumped back into the UFO, and because of the whole space-time continuum, we went through a time portal, and only 1 second of Earth time went by, and we arrived home. In this room of 200 people, who here believes me? Oh, no one. I'll tell you another story. 2,000 years ago, God sent us his son, Jesus, born from a virgin, 100% God, 100% human at the same time. While he's alive, he raised a dead girl back to life, gave a man born blind his sight again. More than that, he died on a cross. And if you believe this, God will wash away all your sin, guilt, and shame. More than that, 3 days later, he rose from the grave. And more than that, he's in heaven right now. If you believe that, his spirit will live in you right now. More than that, one day in the future, depending on which denomination you belong to, he will come again. And he'll set up a physical kingdom here on earth, and at that moment, your body will rise from its grave and be reunited with your soul. Now, in a room full of 200 people, who here believes me? Whoa, okay, hands down. That's a majority belief. Now, at this moment, you're wondering, why am I happy to believe the Jesus story, but not the Jupiter story? Because let's face it, they're both pretty wacky. They're both pretty unbelievable. And the Jesus story is less believable than the Jupiter story. Let's be honest. So why do we believe the Jesus story but not the Jupiter story? Because of what psychologists, sociologists, and philosophers call plausibility structures. So as I am telling you this story, you actually have these pre-programmed, predetermined plausibility structures that prejudge my story as bum, bum, red light, unbelievable, or bling, green light, believable. So when I tell you the Jupiter story, I say, hey, a UFO landed in my backyard last week. Your pre-programmed, predetermined plausibility structures are prejudging my stories. Bum, 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 unbelievable. We went to Jupiter. Bum, 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 unbelievable. We went through a time portal. Bum, 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 unbelievable, unbelievable, unbelievable. But when I tell you the Jesus story, I say, Jesus, born of a virgin. Oh, your plausibility structures are green, lighting, everything. Bling, 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 believable, believable, believable. He died on a cross and he rose from the dead. Bling, 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 believable. One day you too will rise from the dead. Bling, 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 believable, believable, believable. Now you think, whoa, where do I get these plausibility structures that prejudge a story as bum, bum, unbelievable, bling, believable? We get them from 3 main sources. We get them from our community, so friends and family that we know, love, and trust. We get them from our own personal experiences, and we get them from facts, evidence, and data. So as I tell you the Jupiter story, none of us live in a community of friends and family who believe in UFOs. None of us have had a personal experience of UFOs in our life, and none of us believe there are any facts, evidence, or data to support my story. But when I tell you the Jesus story, most of us live in a community of other friends and family who believe in the Jesus story. we've had a personal experience of Jesus in our life, and we believe there are enough facts, evidence, and data to support my Jesus story. Now, out of these three, which one do we think is the most powerful one in determining belief? Now, we may want it to be facts, evidence, and data. We may think it should be facts, evidence, and data. We may think it better be facts, evidence, and data. But facts, evidence, and data is the least powerful one in determining belief. Community is the one that's most powerful in determining belief. Community determines how you interpret your experiences. Community determines how you interpret facts, evidence, and data. And the least powerful one is facts, evidence, and data. Because if I said to you, the UFO is in my backyard right now, who here could be prepared to fly to Sydney, Australia to check out the UFO in my backyard? No one. No, the evidence is there, but you could not be bothered to check it out. And let's say you did come out and you did see it. You touched the UFO in my backyard. You'd be going, nah. This is a hoax. There's another explanation. You would explain away the facts, evidence, and data. Facts, evidence, and data is the least powerful one. The one that's most powerful is community. We think like those around us think, we behave like those around us behave, and we believe what those around us believe. So when my wife and I were expecting our second child, we couldn't work out what to name him. Every parent has to play this game. What do we name our child? We don't want a name so common like John, Peter, David, because that's boring. But we don't want a name so weird like Matthew with 3 T's and a silent Q, because that's just... So every parent's thinking, how do we find that perfect name? And that year we thought, you know what? We will name him Cooper. And we thought, how amazing are we? Now everyone's going to think, wow, look at those parents, so hip, so trendy, on the cutting edge. Well, that year we named him Cooper. Cooper was a top 10 name in Australia. We didn't know about we were just sheep. We were just doing what everyone around us was doing. Now, this is very polarizing, so I'll try to keep it politically sensitive. But if I was in Australia, so pretend you're in Australia, cut me some slack, in this room full of Bible-believing, God-fearing, church-attending Christians, if we were in Australia, and I said, hands up, who here believes the government should pay for health and education? There should be a safety net. Oh, every hand would go up. If I say, hands up, who here thinks it should be mandatory for motorcyclists to wear a helmet? Oh, every hand would go up. And if I said to you, who here believes that we have a God-given right to bear arms, to pack heat? As we came into church today, we could have brought in a concealed weapon. Everyone would look at me horrified. What are you talking about? But if we were in Texas, so imagine we're in Texas right now, in the same room for God-fearing, Bible-believing, church-attending Christians. If I said, who here believes the government should pay for health and education? Everyone go, oh, no way. My money is my money. It's not going to someone else too lazy to work for it. If I said, who here believes that it should be mandatory for a motorcyclist to wear a helmet? They go, no. It's their head. They're free to do what they want with their head. And if they go to hospital, at least I'm not paying the hospital bills, right? And if I said, who here believes we have a God-given right to bear arms, every arm would go up. You think, whoa, same room like of Bible-believing, church-attending, God-fearing Christians, but community determines behavior and belief. So when I tell you the UFO story in this room, I'm unbelievable because I'm the one bozo in the whole room who believes in the UFO story. But when I tell you the UFO story, imagine if this half of the room goes, oh, me too. I too had a UFO come in my backyard last week. I too went to the home planet Jupiter. I thought that was you I saw. I just didn't want to wave just in case. Now this half of the room, you're thinking, oh, this is more believable because half the people I know, love, and trust also believe the story. Now, imagine if I tell you the UFO story. The whole room says, oh, me too. And you're the one bozo who doesn't believe the story. Now, it's way more believable. I'm not talking about the truth status. I'm talking about the believability status of the story. And that's why the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians 15 says, hey, I saw Christ risen from the dead. Oh, wait, not just me, but the other 12 apostles saw Christ risen from the dead. Oh, wait, not just them, but 500 other people in your community that you know, love, and trust, they also saw Christ risen from the dead. And we're not talking about the truth status of the story. Christ is risen from the dead, whether you like it or not. But we're talking about the believability status. It's way more believable if your friends also believe in the same story. Why am I saying this? Because up until now, when we run anything on evangelism, we see it as a solo thing that we do by ourselves. We say, you know what? It's about time I tell my friends about Jesus. So we go out solo. We sign up for a football team, a book reading club, a cooking club. And you know what? I'm going to tell them about Jesus, which is brave, it's noble, it's true, but you be the one bozo in the room who believes in the story. And the Jesus story, true as it is, will be unbelievable. So what we need to do as Christians is to merge our universes of friends, to get our friends to become friends with their friends. Because as Christians, we have two separate universes, a Christian universe, a non-believing universe of friends. Christian universe has a barbecue, we go with them. Non-believing universe, they go to the movies, we go with them, we keep them separate. But we need to merge our universes of friends so that when our Christian friends go to the movies, invite our non-believing friends along. When our non-believing friends have a barbecue, invite our Christian friends along, and bit by bit merge our universes of friends so that our non-believing friends will fall into a community of believers. So when I was a junior doctor, I stayed in hospital accommodation, and in my apartment, I had 3 other junior doctors, non-believers. But because they were sharing accommodation with me, every time my church friends came over, they met my church friends. And when our church friends went out, we invited my non-believing apartment friends along. Every time my non-believing apartment friends went somewhere, I invited my church friends along, and bit by bit, we merged our universes of friends. And after 2 years, because it takes 2 years to form a new network of friends, my non-believing friends started to come to church, and after 2 years, they gave their lives to Jesus because they had fallen into a community of believers, and the Jesus story became way more believable. So as I hinted this morning, what we need then is a lifestyle change where we deliberately, intentionally merge our universes of friends. Evangelism, it's like fitness and health. Every year with fitness and health, we make the same New Year's resolution. This year for sure, I'm going to eat less, drink less, exercise more. So we sign up for a gym, we get up at 5 a.m, and we go for a run, and it's unsustainable. We keep it up for a week because it's one extra thing that we try to shoehorn into our busy calendar, when really fitness and health needs to be a lifestyle change. Our life becomes fit. And evangelism is the same. It's not one extra thing that we try to add to our calendar, one extra event that the church puts on. No. Our lifestyle becomes evangelistic, where we're trying, on top of other things, to merge our universes of friends. So my wife and I, Stephanie and I, right now we're at this stage of life where God has blessed us with so many non-believing friends. So my wife and I now, we try to matchmake our non-believing friends with our believing friends. This used to happen to me all the time when I was a single guy. You know, as a single guy, you turn up to a party and you think, oh, it's happened again. How did I not see this? Like, it's happened again. There's a married couple, and there's a single lady all by herself, and they're sitting me right next to her. They're trying to match me up. So my wife and I think, oh, let's matchmake our non-believing friends with our believing friends, not romantically, but socially. Oh, this set of friends would get on really well with this set of friends. Let's make something happen. So that's tip number 1. We need to merge our universes of friends. Get our friends to become friends with their friends. And it's a lifestyle change. Tip number 2, we need to pivot from event-based evangelism to what they now call disciple-making evangelism. We need to pivot from event-based evangelism to disciple-making evangelism. What do I mean by this? Well, event-based evangelism is what we've been used to. It's the Billy Graham style of evangelism, where you get a professional, trained, gifted speaker to give the 20-minute Bible talk. You invite your non-believing friend to hear this person speak. Now, long may this continue, because I am paid by City Bible Forum in Sydney to be that guy that gives that talk at your church event. This pays the bills, but they're now showing, you know what? Now that we're so post-Christian, that's probably only 1% of the way evangelism works. The rest of the way evangelism works is through disciple-making evangelism, which is where the non-professional, untrained Christian just has an organic, natural, one-on-one conversation with their friend. 99% of evangelism is going to happen this way. And this is a good thing. Barna.com, which is a USA company that runs statistics on evangelism, they've surveyed non-believers, and the non-believer says, you know, if they were going to hear about Jesus, they would prefer that it came through a conversation with a Christian friend. And the average non-believer, yes, they have a problem with the abstract idea of Christianity, but they don't have a problem with a Christian friend in their life. They have a very high view of the Christian friend in their life. And now they're showing, you know what, it's actually always been this way. I was listening to this UK podcast with Glenn Scrivener. He's an Australian expat in the UK, and he interviewed a guy called Mark Green. And Mark Green says they're now showing studies that when a person heard Billy Graham speak at the London Crusades and they walked down the front and they gave their life to Jesus, this person had had 32 prior gospel conversations with a Christian friend. And so all we're trying to do is just be one of those 32 prior conversations that our friend might have in their journey to knowing more and more about Jesus. But that's why we've come, because we've come to be part of this disciple-making evangelism. So what else can we do? Well, we need to pivot from learning to evangelize like preachers to learning to evangelize like counselors. Up until now, if you went to a seminary or Bible college and you took a class on evangelism, chances are you got trained in how to walk up to a stranger on a university campus or plane, or you got trained on how to give the 20-minute Bible talk at the church event. And again, long may this continue. I am paid by City Bible Forum to be that guy who evangelizes like a preacher. But now we're pivoting. We need to evangelize like counselors. How do preachers evangelize? They evangelize through monologues. They control the conversation. They monologue for 20 minutes. But how do counselors evangelize? Counselors, if you ever see a counselor, they do it through questions. They ask you questions. And now evangelism studies and New Testament studies, and I'm sure you've heard the statistic, they found out Jesus himself asked about 300 questions in the New Testament. Jesus was asked 200 questions, and when he answered, he only directly answered a question 8 times. The rest of the time he answered with another question. Jesus, by what authority do you do these things? Jesus says, I don't know. By what authority does John the Baptist do his things? Jesus, should we pay taxes or not? Jesus says, I don't know. Show me a coin. Whose head do you see on it? So Jesus would do it through questions. And I thought, yes, that's what counselors do. They help you discover the pain point and the solutions for yourself. I remember when I was going through a major crossroads in my life, I was trying to decide whether to stay in full-time medicine or go into full-time Christian ministry. And I lined up 5 respected Christian leaders, and I booked an appointment into their offices, and I asked for their advice. And they gave me their advice, a 1-hour monologue of advice. And I remember walking out of their offices and thinking, that was so disappointing. But I don't know why I asked for their advice. But then I asked a Christian friend of mine who was a trained professional counselor. And I said to him, hey, I I could stay in medicine, couldn't I? And he said to me, you could, couldn't you? And with that one question, I realized I didn't want to. He unlocked me with a question. And that's what we can. We can unlock people with questions. We ask counselor type questions. Once a year, I do a high school ski camp ministry. And one of the counselors, she really is a trained professional counselor in real life. She would sit on the chairlifts with the high schoolers and she would ask them counselor type questions like, where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? What's important to you? What does success look like for you? What if things don't work out? How do you wish things had turned out differently? They're counselor type questions. And elementary school teachers learn the same questions. We need to evangelize like counselors. Counselors also have what's called the power of the second question. As a medical doctor, we love to make fun of our psychiatry colleagues. We say, it doesn't take much to be a psychiatrist. You just need to learn 2 questions to ask. Question number 1, how are things going? Question number 2, how are things really going? It's that power of the second question. So I work 1 or 2 days a week as a medical doctor in the operating rooms. Same thing. I remember one time a junior nurse asked me, what books should I read? And that was my chance to power play, mansplain to her, say, these are the top 10 books in the canon of Western literature. But instead, I just said, why do you ask? And then she said, because I feel so young, so inexperienced. I said, well, would you like to talk to someone? She said, yes. And I said, well, I work for City Bible Forum. There's a lady from China who speaks your language. She could meet up with you. Would you like that? And she said, yes. Another time I was operating, the surgeon asked me, so Sam, because in Sydney, we had the International Pride March this year in March. Sam, are you going in the Pride March? And I'm just racing around, just thinking what to say, because everyone's listening. 3 nurses are listening in. The anesthesiologist is listening in. There's stunned silence. But instead I say, why do you ask? And he said, because my wife's brother is gay. And I just say, well, tell me more. So often all we have to do is say, hey, tell me more. I remember one time in January in Australia, you can't get any work done until you've asked the question. And the question is this, what did you do for Christmas? And once you've asked that, now you can get on to the rest of the day. So one time I asked one of the nurses, hey, so what did you do for Christmas? And he said, we had family come from interstate. But then I asked, and how did that go? And he said, you know what? It didn't go well. And then all I have to do is say, tell me more. How do you feel about that? Tell me more. And at that moment, you listen. And my counselor friends, they say there are 3 types of listening. There's listening where you're just waiting for your turn to talk. So that's not listening. There's listening where you're waiting for your turn to tell them why they're wrong. Okay, that's not listening. But then the 3rd type is genuine listening. And my counselor friends say there's a trick to this. Whenever they stop talking, you just take a drink and you just start drinking. And that's saying, buddy, I'm not doing any talking. You need to keep going. And I remember when I was seeing a counselor and she would do that to me. And I thought, I so know what you're doing. But this little voice in my head would be saying to me, shut up, stop talking. You're giving her way too much information. Now she knows you're crazy, but it will work. People just want to talk. If you let them talk, they will talk. And when they talk, we're trying to do 3 things. We're trying to hear, we're trying to understand, and we're trying to feel the emotion behind what they're saying. So guys, it's everything you were taught in premarital counseling. Do you remember that? Conflict resolution. You come home, your wife says, you didn't do the dishes. Oh, easy. You just say, oh, from what I hear you saying, and you just repeat her words back at her. Oh, I didn't do the dishes. Then you say, oh, I understand. And here you summarize her words into your words to show you're not just repeating her words back at her, but you're identifying the issue behind the question. Oh, I understand I'm not doing my share of the housework. So good. Or that must make you feel blank, and you just got to guess an emotion. But it's always going to be anger. It's always going to be anger, right? That must make you feel so angry and tick, just like that, conflict resolved. My wife caught me giving this advice to my guy friends, and she said, oh, if I ever catch you doing that to me. And I said, oh, from what I hear you saying. All right, tip number 4. What we're actually trying to do through all of this is we're becoming the unofficial, de facto chaplain in their life. We're earning the right to become the unofficial, de facto chaplain in their life. I have a friend called Craig. Craig served as a military chaplain, saw duty in Afghanistan. A lot of bad stuff happens. He prays, he pastors for the troops, but the commanding officer was a strict atheist, didn't want any of this religious mumbo-jumbo stuff, had no time for Craig. But one day, enough bad stuff happens. The commanding officer asked Craig, come into my office, close the door behind you. Can you pray for me? And my chaplain friends say this is how it always works. They try to put up a brave front, but come a time of crisis, when their guard comes down, they will reach out to you for you to bring meaning into their crisis, for you to speak on behalf of God, for you to connect them with the sacred. So how can we earn the right to become the unofficial de facto chaplain? We show a genuine curiosity in their life. And that's really easy to do because we see them as who they really are, someone in the image of God, the most important person God has brought into my life right now. And I'm going to show genuine curiosity. So we ask them, what did you do on the weekend? So at work, a lot of my evangelism is with the colleagues at work. Friday, ask them what they're doing on the weekend. Monday, follow up. How was what you did on the weekend? Genuine curiosity. Learn the names of their children, and then find out the meaning behind why they name their children those names. At work, a lot of the nurses and we call them wards people, I think you call them transporters, they're covered in tattoos. So I always ask them, what was your first tattoo? What's the next tattoo you have planned? Which one's your favorite one? What's the meaning behind this tattoo? Show genuine curiosity and follow up. Then also show them you're the one who understands. Craig Springer from Alpha USA, he got the saying from someone else, so it's not original to me, not original to Craig Springer, but home is where you're understood. So you're trying to be their home away from home, someone who understands. So there was a nurse at work, I kept asking her, hey, how are the kids, how are the kids, how are the kids? She was always amazed. How do you remember the names of my children? I said, I just do, but how are they going? How are the kids, how are the kids? And guard is always up, they're good, they're good, they're good. But one day she says, you know what, they're not good. They've got learning difficulties and they're getting bullied at school. And that's when I go, oh, you're afraid they're going to fall behind. And she says, that's it. So we can speak their fears and anxieties where they feel they're understood. Another nurse at work says she's changing jobs. I said, I'm very happy for you. It's the power of the second question. I said, how do you feel about that? Or the power of the pause. Pause long enough, they'll volunteer the next bit of information. And she said, you know what? I'm afraid. I'm really, really afraid. And I said, yes, because it just feels like you're just jumping into a bottomless pit and you don't know where it's going to end. And she said, yes, that's it. And so when we demonstrate enough capital this way, what we do now is we offer to pray. We say, hey, I say, My wife, my kids, we pray every night for our friends. Is it okay if we pray for you tonight? I don't say, I will pray for you. It's coming. That's creepy when it comes from an old Asian dude. So I say, my wife, my kids, we pray every night for our friends. Can we pray for you tonight? And they will say, yes, that would be lovely. And that night I text them, I say, we just prayed for you. And they're not used to prayer. They go, wow, okay. Next day I check up on them, or next week I say, hey, we prayed for your back pain. We prayed for your anxiety about the new job. Hey, I prayed for the kids. How are they now? And they will say, you know what? I think things are better. And that's when I use this word. I say, it's a miracle. And they go, yeah. So now I'm introducing the idea of a personal God who does miracles, who might intervene. And then I say to them, I ask them safe questions like, what faith did you have growing up? Or what religion did your parents bring you up with? What was church like for you growing up? These are safe questions because they're not imposing a belief on you right now. And then I just simply say, tell me more. Wow, tell me more. Take a genuine interest in their life. And then number 5, somehow try to read the Bible with them. I think we're so post-church, so post-Christian. It's almost like they're going to need the whole Bible now. A little 6-point summary is not going to do it for them. For me, what's working for me right now is, I call it, I get a toe in the door, then I get a foot in the door, then I get a leg in the door. It begins with me saying, I ask them, how are things going? So I've got a friend I'm playing football with in a senior league. And I said to him, hey, how are things going? He says, I thought taking up football again would get me to stop smoking, but I'm still smoking. I say, hey, how about this? I'm going to pray for you every day that you stop smoking. He goes, okay. So every day I text him, hey, just prayed for you. And I put it in the positive. I say, I pray that today you will feel God's delight, pleasure, and joy. Because they're not used to God language like that, positive language of God. Every day I find something different. Hey, I hope you feel God's face shining upon you. And he's going, what is this? I've never heard of God language like this. And ... and a cigarette-free day. All right. And then I did that for about a week. He goes, hey, thank you for the text. I actually look forward to them every morning. I said, is it okay if I keep going? He goes, sure. Then I started texting him a Bible verse. And again, a really positive, uplifting verse. And he's saying, I love these verses. He said, listen, I was raised in a religious environment. I read the Bible as a kid, but I'm not familiar with the Bible like this. And he loved it so much that when I caught a plane 2 months ago to come to the USA, he said, hey, Sam, here's a Bible verse for you. And he gave me a perfect verse from Proverbs for a traveler. And I said, hey, great verse. You do know your Bible. He goes, actually, I had to Google that one. But I said, hey, but it's a start. Then I saw him the other day. I said, hey, I'm going to start texting you stories about Jesus from the Bible. Is that okay? And he said, yes. So bit by bit, I'm just bringing more and more Bible and more Jesus into his life. At City Bible Forum, and I get no kickbacks, no money from this, but just showing you what we're using. We use a resource called the Word One-to-One. And it's the book of John, but put in contemporary font, contemporary covers, contemporary pages, because their thinking is for the average non-believer, the Bible is very scary. It's scary for 2 reasons. Number 1, the Bible has a big black leather cover. The pages are thin. The print is tiny. The only time they've seen something like this is in a vampire movie. So it's a horror movie prop. And the other thing a non-believer is terrified about is talking out loud and answering questions out loud. So with the Word One-to-One, you say, hey, listen, would you love to read some stories about Jesus so you get to know Jesus a bit better? They go, okay. I say, well, this is all it involves. We're going to have a coffee. We'll meet in a coffee shop, and it'll only take 10 minutes, and we're just going to turn pages together. You're going to have one copy. I'm going to have the other copy. Every time you turn a page, I'm going to turn a page with you. So we're reading it together. and you're not going to have to read out loud. I'm not going to ask you any questions. The only question you have to answer at the end of the 10 minutes is, did you like that? That's it. That's the only question I'm going to ask you. Would you like to do it? Yes. So my wife and I, once again, we're blessed with so many non-believing friends, but we're so frustrated. We still haven't told them about Jesus. So my wife says, hey, there's this friend I would love to tell about Jesus. I said, well, why don't you say every Friday morning after the school drop-off, have a coffee at my place and we'll read the Bible together? And this lady said, yes. So my wife started doing it with another lady. Another lady from school heard they were doing it, so she wanted to join. And I'm thinking, I don't know, it says the word 121. Will it work if it's word 122? So I actually rang up a friend who worked for word 121. I said, my wife, my 2 friends now want to read it with my wife. Will this work? She said, yeah, of course it will work. Give it a go. Another lady finds out she wants to join them now, so it's word 123. And then my wife has started inviting another friend. She was a Hindu school mum. And then my wife says to her, would you like to read the Bible, hear stories about Jesus? And she says, you know what, I'm a Hindu, but even I haven't read our sacred scriptures yet. I'm in. I will join you reading the Bible. So right now I think there's a hunger, there's a search for spirituality, and this is what we find has been working for us. I have so many more things I want to say, but I have a time limit. So once again, David mentioned my book, How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. It's got 9 tips. Tonight I covered 5 and I had to do it very quickly. It's got all 9 tips in there and all the detail. If you're trying to take notes, don't worry, it's all in here. How to talk about Jesus. And Dave Owen didn't realize he's in here. His name gets mentioned in here. Providence Church gets mentioned in here. And so you guys are famous. You're in this book. So how to talk about Jesus without becoming that guy. We have a 5-minute break and then I'll answer questions from you guys.
Here, some amazing questions are coming in. And so to honor the time, for parents and all that have to get their kids shortly. Sam, thanks so much. Let's go through some of these. So a lot of them. So I'm trying to summarize some of them. Thank you for taking time to do that. The first one, how do I meet more unbelievers, especially in the age of remote work?
Oh, yeah, how do I meet more unbelievers in an age of remote work? I get this question a lot. So the problem that we're all finding is it's very hard to make friends. And if you're finding that, you are not alone. Studies are now showing loneliness is a new health epidemic in the Western world. Loneliness is as likely to kill you as smoking half a pack of cigarettes a day. People on TED Talks are now telling people, you got to get out there. You got to make some friends. The most watched TED Talk of all time is by a guy called Dr. Robert Waldinger from the Harvard Research, with that very famous Harvard Research where they trace the lives of over 70 men over 70 years. And they found that the number one correlation with health and happiness wasn't whether you had paid off your house or not, wasn't whether you were CEO of a company or not, and wasn't whether you had $1 million or not. The number one correlation for health and happiness was, do you have any friends? Like people that love you and care for you, and people that you love and care. So not necessarily romantic relationships, but do you have any relationships, friends? And they're saying that 60% of Westerners say they're lonely, 80% of Westerners say it's a problem in their life. Sociologists say we all need a tribe of 150. It's called Dunbar's number. We also need an inner circle of 30 friends, and we need a tight circle of 3 to 5 friends. These are the 3 or 5 people you can ring in an emergency, help you move house, loan you some money, or maybe babysit your kids for you in a crisis. They're saying that 60 to 80% of people in the West say they don't even have that. So if you're finding it lonely, you're not alone. So really, we just got to get out there. I know it just sounds too simple to be true. We just got to get out there, make things happen. So little proactive things. So actually take a genuine interest in anyone's life. So you just look to make things happen. So I'm in the age of life now where 3 of my boys have weekend sports. I thought weekend sports was going to be fantastic. Just dump my kids there and I could sit in the car, read a book and have a coffee. No, they want all of you. But my friend said, don't fight it, embrace it. Get out there, get on the barbecue roster, get on the umpire roster. And when you stand on the sideline, stand next to a parent and just say, hey, how are things going? Which one's your kid? And bit by bit, take a genuine curiosity in their life. Next weekend, just follow up. Say, how was that picnic you talked about? So bit by bit, just say, I've got to work the room. I just got to get out there. I've got to work the room. And then if we're doing remote work, it could be simple as just a follow-up chat with someone. Say, hey, I saw you on Zoom. How are things going? Just something like that. Or maybe sign up for a club, sign up for a sport. Just make something happen. Deliberately, proactively go out there and make something happen. Now, the next question you're going to ask me is, okay, but am I using this friendship because I'm trying to tell them about Jesus? But the answer is no. You're just trying to love them. You're just trying to be Jesus to them. Just by being their friend, they will live 5 years longer. So it's like you are relief. You're providing humanitarian aid to this person by being their friend. And missionaries who live in closed countries, they say they face this problem all the time. In official closed countries, their only way of evangelism is through friendship. But what happens after 20 years, you've invested all these years in this person and they still haven't become a friend? My friends say, but I got to love them. And that's the important thing. In fact, they say my primary purpose is to go in and to love them, to be Jesus and to love them intentionally. And unintentionally, evangelism opportunities will arise. So you're not using them to tell them about Jesus. You're actually loving them. You're being Jesus in their life.
Fantastic. So here we go. We got quite a few. So, Sam, when this one came in, summarizing, engaging with an unbeliever and their primary objections to the gospel center on cultural issues, i.e., gender issues, etc. Should I address the issues or try to just keep pointing them to Jesus? What's the balance there?
Yeah, there's no one-size-fits-all option. It really depends on, it's very context-specific. So I think as general guidelines, they've worked out no one really changes their mind. So no matter how much you win the argument, they do not change their mind. In fact, it has the opposite effect. They call it the double down effect. When they've been proven to be wrong, with better argumentation, better evidence, they will double down on their original position and believe it even more because they do not want to lose an argument. So there's only so much we can do with a logical argument with facts and evidence. So I think what we can do, especially if they're a friend, is just to love them, to be in their life and show genuine curiosity and just ask good questions. Tell me more. Why do you ask? How do you feel about this? Why is this important to you? Those sort of questions, and just show a genuine curiosity. Good people who talk about this on the Gospel Coalition, Keller Center, Cultural Apologetics. You have Rebecca McLaughlin, same-sex attracted woman, does a lot of writing. Rachel Gilson, also same-sex attracted woman, does a lot of writing for Gospel Coalition. They say often, especially on gender issues, the activist out there on social media is not the person in front of you in your life who struggles with this. So the activist is the minority, and usually they don't speak for the room. So do not mistake your friend for the activist you read online. Your friend that you know is generally struggling with these things. So I think we can love them and just be Jesus to them and show genuine curiosity and understanding.
Also, how would a Western church that historically, and most churches have been event-driven, their kind of mode of discipleship, move towards a more of a disciple-making approach, even practically from each ministry area, student, college, etc.?
Yes, that's right. So it's a both and. We still need our events. So Christmas is an obvious event. Carols is an event. Easter is an event. So we still need our events. But knowing that for our non-believing friend to come to that event, a lot of disciple making has to already have happened before they've come here. And I think, well, how do we do it? I think we just do it by exactly what we've done tonight. Set the vision that really this is the new norm. It's disciple-making evangelism, one-on-one, messy, organic conversations that happen with our friends. So I'll give you an example of how this has worked at our church. So let's see. In February, traditionally, this is what our church traditionally does. In October, we try to run a family service. And I know this sounds really family-centric, but it's an easy target because you put on a puppet show, you tell your friends at school, hey, bring your kids to church. We've got, really special service for them. We've got puppets. You'll enjoy it. But we run it so that we know the adults will get something out of it as well. We call it the Shrek principle. Kids are laughing at Shrek, but the adults are laughing as well. There's something for them. And then we say, hey, did you like church today? And we say, well, come. In, let's say, December, we have carols, or maybe it's in November. And then everyone loves carols, and especially immigrants, migrants, because they want to check out the culture of carols. They're intrigued. Come to carols. Usually there'll be carols is great. So they'll say, hey, did you like that? Come to Christmas. So on Christmas Day, we have, the Christmas service. And usually I preach on that day. And then we say, hey, did you like that? Well, January, we'll all go on holidays. In Australia, nothing happens in January. And then we come back, we say, Sam is going to do Feb Talks. So we're riffing off TED Talks. So every Sunday in February, I do the talk aimed at non-believing friends, coming from their world, sympathetic from their world, and bit by bit wooing them into our world. So we've been doing this for about 12 straight years. But then we've been noticing over the last few years, numbers are becoming down because it's event-based. And even come Feb Talks, you look out in front of you and you say, I'm seeing everyone I know. Like no one was able to bring a friend. So then last year, what we did around August, we did exactly what you're doing now. We ran a whole month of seminars on disciple-making evangelism, where we shared a lot of things in my book, like, okay, between August and here, you guys need to merge your universes of friends. And the other tips I put in there are, you got to go to their things. They will come to your things. Have them over for a coffee. Have them over for a meal. Have hospitality with them. Take an interest in their life. Ask them, like, what religion did your parents bring you up with? And just leave it there. Don't bring your religion in yet. And then say, hey, come to our thing. So this year, if our church congregation, much smaller than yours, so let's say we normally have 150 people. This year we had 220 people because we had become organically out there. So it's a both and. We need the events, but we need people intentionally doing everything we said today in the seminar. And then from Feb Talks, we channel them into life courses where we try to disciple the newcomers. So bit by bit. So it's a both and.
Sam, we're some studies show that we're past Silicon Valley in the most PhDs per capita. And so there's a lot of educated professionals in the Triangle area. Any helps with just approach to the scientific slant? They're wanting to really start with the facts and evidence and data, and so just help us with that, my man.
Well, there's another Australian called John Dixon. John Dixon has done a lot of writing, but right now he has a website called undeceptions.com. And it's done so well. It's become a conference. We had the first conference this year, and he gets a lot of really, really smart people there to answer questions on how can I trust the Bible, the problem of science. He gets Muslims and Buddhists and Hindus on there who talk about their journey into the Christian faith. And here, your PhD friends can meet Sarah Irving Stonebreaker. I think it's like that. They'll meet. Ooh, I think her name is Rosalind Picard. I could be really wrong. She was an expert in AI. So it's interesting how they journeyed into faith. So Rosalind Picard, uber nerdy scientist, can't be a Christian. She's a scientist. But then in this episode with her, she says, I met my boss. And my boss was a Christian and he was intelligent. So up until now, I thought only dumb people were Christians. But my boss is not dumb. So there's something to this. So notice she's fallen into a community of believers. So that's affected her plausibility structures. First thing, she met an intelligent Christian. Second thing, her boss challenged her to read the Bible. Said to her, if you want to be intellectually honest, that was a phrase, if you want to be intellectually honest, you have to read the Bible. Like really, you have to read the Bible. And he got her to begin in Proverbs. Can't argue against Proverbs. So she reads all of Proverbs, and this is brilliant. That makes her read the rest of the Bible. So she journeys into faith after about 2 years. So we have a really uber nerdy PhD friend. Just point them to these sort of stories. Sarah Irving Stonebreaker, atheist, Australian, was studying in the UK. That's when she meets Rebecca McLaughlin and her husband. They're doing PhD studies together at Cambridge. Same thing. Up until now, I thought only dumb people were Christians. But Sarah and her husband are not dumb. Wow, I need to check this out. But to be intellectually honest, I need to check this out. She then has a crisis because she reads the writings of Peter Singer, who has very out there views on human rights and animal rights. She realizes Peter Singer's right. If there's no God, there are no human rights. This is a fictional story we've made up just to get along. But she wants to believe in human rights. But then she realizes she needs a God if she wants to keep on believing human rights. Walks into an Anglican chapel in Florida. By now she's teaching at Florida State University and is blown away by transcendence, like worship, and says, okay, God is real. That's how she journeys into faith. So no one sort of becomes a Christian overnight, but it usually begins with them meeting another intelligent Christian who then says, if you want to be intellectually honest, you have to check this out. So I speak at high school ski camps. Everyone's got their minds made up by the time they're 14 or 15, but I put it out to them. If you want to be intellectually honest, you need to check this out for yourself. Check out the Bible for yourself. And if you have questions about the Bible, its reliability, go to undeceptions.com.
So, Sam, on a lot of questions around merging the universe. And I think for our culture right now, there's about 12 internationals that move to our city a day. It's with the universities, the study. And so how do you merge universes, not just when there's unique hobbies maybe connected, but actually like with Hindus and Muslims and people of faith? How do you walk us through that?
Yes, such great opportunities. So our plausibility structure is very much shaped by our community. And so if we want to be a bit more intentional, a bit more algorithmic about it, studies show, and I know this is God at work, but God works through human means. When God parted the Red Sea, he also said to Moses, lift your arms. So often I've wondered if Moses didn't lift his arms, would the Red Sea have parted? Tim Keller also says, when Elijah built the altar, only God could send the fire. Elijah couldn't send the fire, but Elijah still had to build the altar. He had his part to play. So of course this is all God, 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 but what things can we do to be a little bit more intentional? They find with plausibility structures, what works really well is maybe a 2-to-1 ratio. Like in this group, have 2 believers and 1 non-believer. And the believers can help shape the plausibility structures of the non-believers simply because it's 2-to-1. I remember one time doing a question and answer time. This is a long time ago where I gave a 5-minute Jesus talk, open it to the room for question and answer. The room was filled with non-believers, hostile non-believers, drunk non-believers, and basically that night went just bad. Like I got shouted down, it did not go well, and the room basically, they were like a pack of dogs. It's that psychology of a mass of baying dogs. So as they get fired up, they get fired up. So they get fired up. It's crowd psychology. So it doesn't work well if you try to merge universes and you bring your one believing friend into a pack of 100 non-believing friends. But if you try to bring two believing friends to one believing friend, that works really well. I think migrant communities are very hungry. They are searching, and they've come to America thinking America is a Christian country. They actually think it's a Christian country. You may disagree, but they think it's a Christian country. So they do want to check out Christianity. They're actually highly curious. They don't know what is genuine curiosity, Christianity, but if you say, hey, do you want to know what Christians really believe? They will want to know. My parents used to run an international student ministry for college students, and it was so effective. It was so effective because they're looking for community, they're looking for belonging, they're looking for tribe. Another thing to explore, and churches are playing with this, right? How can we get non-believers to find belonging with believers? So this is a really interesting concept. And I mentioned this 4 years ago when I was here, that up until now, we used to think it was belief, belonging, behavior. So your non-believing friend goes to a Billy Graham crusade, hears a message, believes. They pray the prayer, they come down the front, and they get plugged into a church, so they belong. Then they go to small group Bible studies, they get discipled, and then they behave like a Christian. Now we realize, now we're post-Christendom, it's much more, they will find belonging, then they find behavior, and then they find belief. And now we think, you know what, it was like that all along anyway, because the non-believer who heard Billy Graham speak was a church non-believer. They were on a church bus, they'd been in your church basketball team, they grew up in your Sunday school, they already had this and this before they went to Billy Graham. So then we've got to think, how can we help our non-believing friends find belonging and behavior in our Christian circles? And here in the Old Testament, it's fascinating because in the Old Testament, you have your Holy of Holies where only true believers can go. But remember, they have a forecourt where non-believers and believers can sort of mingle. And remember the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians say, you've got to run church in such a way as this. Why? So that the non-believer who's mingling in your church will hear the message and say, the Lord really is among you. So we've got to run a church in such a way where non-believers can actually find belonging inside church. Tim Keller does it in a way, because New York's full with musicians, they had a jamming session for musicians just before church started. So they're finding belonging, they're shoulder to shoulder with other Christians. I think especially men love being shoulder to shoulder with Christians, talking about Jesus, not face to face. So if we can find shoulder to shoulder activities for our non-believing male friends. So it could be as simple as what my wife and I do is we reach out to our kids' school friends and we say to the parents, hey, our kids go to Friday night youth group. Would your child like to join our boys at Friday night youth group? Every parent says yes, because what else is their kid doing on a Friday night except gaming? Parents hate gaming. I don't know what it is about gaming. Parents just drives them nuts that my kid is on a device tonight. I say, well, bring them to youth group. So they come to youth group. Kids love it. Bit by bit, the parents want to check out this church. Like, okay, my kid seems to like youth group. What is this church? And then they feel this indebtedness. Like, how can I help this church? So we had one dad said, I just want to clean the church. So then we said, okay, we put you on the cleanup roster. Oh, he loved that. So bit by bit, we think, well, what could you put a non-believer on? Could you put them on the AV roster? Can you put them on the chair setup roster? What rosters can we put them on? And then a friend of mine, he did this. He said, hey, we've got a compassion mission trip coming up to the Philippines. No, it was Indonesia. And we all jumped along. So it's a whole bunch of believers on a compassion trip to visit the compassion children. But this friend invited his non-believing friend along. So this non-believing friend now is on a compassion mission trip, just finding belonging and behavior with other Christians. Then I've heard other Christians in America say, well, every time we have those church mission trips to build an orphan or something like that, we now invite non-believers along. So 1/3 non-believers, 2/3 believers, finding belonging and behavior with the Christians.
Sam, about 1 minute, just help us when the conversations don't go well, they're hostile, they go south. In those, you've been building friendship, you've prayed for the miracle, and the miracle hasn't come. Just how do you respond?
Oh, yeah. We always worry the miracle isn't going to happen, but that's all right. Our non-believing friend wasn't expecting it to happen either, so you've lost nothing on that one. But when it goes hostile, my counselor friends say, easy, just deep breaths, slow your heart rate down, and just simply say, you seem angry. Tell me more. Tell me more. Like, don't debate them. Just say, you seem angry. I remember one time, one of the surgeons I was working with, he was a secular Jew. He was so angry that the local church had leafleted his home with Christmas advertisements. And I said that to my chaplain friend. I said, oh, my surgeon was so angry at Christians, I didn't know what to say. He said, you just had to say, you seem angry. Tell me more. Like, why? Why are you so angry? And then just let them talk, let them vent, be the sounding board. Also at City Bible Forum, we have this saying, a no answer is not a never answer. No just means not now. So we have so many stories of people that would say, hey, do you want to read the Bible with me? And they said no. 18 years later, they say, you know what? Because you asked me, I want to take you up on that now. But you won't get this if you didn't ask this here. So one of the neighbors across the street, I said, hey, do you want to read the Bible? He said, no. I said, fine. Okay, that's not a never answer. One day he will. Guy across the street, diagonally opposite from me, about 10 years ago, he moved in. I said, hey, would you like to come to church with me? He said, no. It was the easiest no answer he's ever given. He didn't even have to think. It was a spinal arc reflex response, like knee-jerk. The higher centers didn't even have to kick in. He said, no. But then we did all these things we talked about tonight. My wife and I would double date, go out for meals. Another guy on my street, he's a Christian. We've merged our universes. So a Christian friend, me, we often take this guy out. We take an interest in his life. And then I got another Muslim friend across the street, taking interest in his life. He comes to church to hear me speak. So we had a boys' night out, Christian friend, me, Muslim friend, this guy. And I said, hey, I'm speaking again in Feb Talks this year. Would you like to come? Muslim friend says, yes, that would be fantastic because you're a great speaker. Says to this guy, you should go. Sam is good. So then this guy, okay. So February, he comes to church to hear me speak. During the meet and greet time, someone says to him, is this your first time at church? He says, yep, first and last. So, but hey, that's one more time than he said he was going to come 10 years ago. But since then, Christian friend and me, we've taken him out once or twice, again, shown love. We just loved him. We just showed we need to love this guy. He's starting to ask us questions now. So no answer 10 years ago is now showing some fruit.
That's amazing. Hey, let's thanks, Sam, for being with us tonight.
Thanks.
So grateful. Praise God for your ministry. We're grateful. Listen, let me do this before we say goodnight. We have been working hard for the last 3 or 4 months to put together a resource page for you. And so we launched that on Friday. It's called pray.org/reach resources. And so we're in this vision called Reach. It is from 1 minute just talks of being able to think about a lot of these things that we've talked about to articles. And so we're super excited. We finished it up on Thursday and it went live on Friday. And so check that out, pray.org/reach resources. Just a page there to just maybe encourage, equip, and continue to stir you on toward loving good deeds in the city. So let me pray. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you for today. It's been a great one. And so I pray that you would take all of these things that we've learned tonight and put them into practice even tomorrow as we head off into the city. May we go with beautiful feet that are gospel-led and conversations would come, and that, God, you, even this week, God, we pray and believe that you would move people from the kingdom of darkness into the glorious, marvelous kingdom of your Son by your people opening their mouth and just sharing the gospel, and it goes forth with great power, bringing dead people to life. And so we speak Jesus over this city this week and ask for you to do a great work. We love you. Pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks for coming out. Have a great week.